Welcome to this episode of the Down the Pool podcast. This is our first podcast in almost a month, and we're really happy to be back. I got my braces tightened today, so I'm going to be extra lispy for you guys. So I'm going to let you guys do the majority of the talking as usual. So Gary, great to see you. Chris, great to see you. Looking forward to this one. That's what you're supposed to say. Hello, Gary, you're on mute.
See, the rust is there. We're not match fit. We've been we've been brought back
Uh,
after a month out, and yeah, we're just not. Well, you
well,
know what? Just when you called to me then as well, I've clicked something that's made just me on the screen. Normally, I minimize myself so I can just see you two. So I'm all over the shop here. I'm having a mare. Chris, take it over, mate. How are
yeah.
you?
Hit
This
that, hit
fucker's
that.
on mute as well, for fuck's
I didn't
sakes.
mean, I swear to God, I didn't mean to. Hit the view button, Gary.
Oh, yeah, I've sorted it now, but
Okay, cool.
I've just got Anthony on the screen. So can you try and look interested while I'm talking, Ant? Normally you're fucking staring off everywhere. Checking your phone, picking your nose.
So,
Uh,
obviously, a lot's happened in the months since we've been away. We've had a loss to Valor. Oh, sorry, a win against Valor, a loss against Forge. Did we lose to York? I think it was a York loss in there. So we're not gonna. The last thing I want to talk about was that fucking Forge game. To be perfectly honest with you, which is kind of why I kind of left this a little bit later in the week because it wasn't fun to watch. I thought we played well first 10 minutes or so, and then they just kept they were hitting us on the counter. And one of the big takeaways from that game was that we creating chances, I guess, but not having shots on target. I think we had like 16 chances and two on target, something like that. So this week, the club has made a blockbuster signing, I think that's going to help us, or is designed to help us in that regard. And we signed Sean Rea, who is former under 21 player of the year. He has a bunch of great stats with Valor in the 2 years he was there. And he also was with CF Montreal. Was it last season he played with them? He started a bunch of games. I guess they had a coach where a lot of stuff imploded. Probably wasn't liked by the new coach because that's the way things work. And he went to Spain and now back with the Wanderers. So, Gary, where it does what was your reaction to the news first of all? Because it was kind of totally out of left field. And where do you see him fitting in to the Wanderers lineup?
I was absolutely delighted. I think he's exactly the kind of player I like watching. I have a very clear memory of watching him in 2022 at the grounds, and the guy I've got a season ticket with, who is very, very knowledgeable about football. I remember him just saying to me, like, that guy is way too good for this league. Like, he's a couple of levels above anyone else on the pitch, and I wholeheartedly agreed with him. He's a wonderful footballer. Small. I'd put him at around 5'7", 5'8". I don't really know the exact dimensions, but he's quite a small player. He's another player, and we've got quite a few of these who likes to play in the pocket, and you can basically play him in any of the positions along the front line. He can be a left winger that inverts onto his right foot. He can be a right winger in the Aidan Daniels mold who inverts centrally and builds from there. His starting position can be central, a la Jeremy. You can basically use him in any of those three positions in the front line, and he'll play well. What's important with him, I think, is that it's not necessarily his starting position. It's where he is when he receives the ball. So even if you're a left winger, you can still receive the ball in central areas. It's not a problem. So I'm sure I'm sure there'll be a few players in that dressing room who are kind of putting in an extra 2 or 3% in training this week because they're thinking we've just brought in kind of one of the finest young midfielders in the league, in league history actually, and I need to prove I'm worthy of my place now. In terms of playing style, he's low center of gravity, wonderful first touch, very good passer. And I say he's a very good passer, but statistically, if you look at him, he's kind of his whole career, no matter what level he's played in, is kind of passed at a 75 to 78% completion rate, which isn't that impressive. But then if you kind of like scratch away at the deeper numbers, he tries a lot of progressive passes. He tries a lot of risky passes. So with a player like him who creates so much, they create so much because they play risky passes, because that's what you've got to do to get them eye of the needle assists. So it's fine with a player like him having an under 80% pass completion rate. We've seen statistically in his previous years in the CPL 5 assists and 9 assists over 2 seasons, which is league leading, especially in 2022. We know he has that. He's in the 99th percentile from a chance creation perspective, and we need chances created because although we are still top of the league from an XG perspective, you have to remember that number is affected quite dramatically by the amount of penalties we've had. So you do need to think of us as a team that still needs to create chances as well. Yeah, like I said, very good footballer. He'll just pick it up in those pockets. He's got really this is the most dickhead thing I've ever said on this podcast, but he's got an elite turning circumference, if you know what I mean. Like, he's wonderful on the swivel. He can just go round and round in little pockets, and that gets him out of trouble. So you can double up on him, but he'll wriggle his way out of trouble. So yeah, really looking forward to seeing him and kind of just watching what players he vibes with, who he builds connections with, and all those sorts of things. It's gonna be fascinating to watch, and we've got him next season as well. So yeah, a lot to look forward to.
So do you think we're going to be able to make a song out of that? Sean Rea, he's got an exceptional turning circumference.
I hope so, yeah.
Chance of the season there. So, Chris, obviously Gary's like, I haven't heard Gary this excited about a player in quite a while. So, kind of like get your reaction too. And, as Gary said there's going to be a couple of players who are probably pushing it a little bit more in training this week. So who do you think is going to be the main competition for the spot in the team where Sean's going to play?
Well, prior to that, that's the part of the signing that I actually am most excited about in a weird way. Is similar to when Daniil Henry came in last year. We figured that he was coming in to partner with Dan Nimick, or the system was going to change to fit Daniil in. And in reality, what happened was everybody else kind of leveled up a little bit. You couldn't drop a Zach Fernandez at that point. Riley was playing great. Wesley was playing great. And then the Dan Kale combination, their partnership in the middle almost flourished even more after Daniil showed up. So I had mentioned on Twitter, I feel like this signing has more value on the field because I feel like it is a need. Like Gary said, it almost feels like a direct signing to the Forge result, because in that Forge game, with all that possession, with all that progression, there wasn't that killer pass. There wasn't that bit of whimsy. There wasn't that chance. So just a quick little footnote. That's really the summary of my excitement of the signing. Is not only is he going to bring something that we are lacking immediately, but I think that he is going to push everybody to be better. That said, I was a little excited when I heard the news. So I did a little bit of research just to confirm what I remember seeing in the player. And there was a left-leaning integrity very early in his career. The first year and a half with Valor, he was on left-sided attacking player, up and down the end lines, got back to defend, but was really more that outlet for the counter-attacking options, pass, run, pass, those type of little intricacies. I think a lot of what held him back in that 2021 season was the fact that, for lack of better terms, Valor were as shit as we were. So he wasn't able to really express himself. And even though in 2022, Valor didn't really show that step forward, I think as an individual, guys like him, Debrienne, Gutierrez, these guys just put the team on their back and decided, all right, we might lose matches, but I'm not about to sacrifice my career for this garbage.
Yeah.
I'm going to play to my ability. So we got to see all three of those guys really flourish, but Rea especially was a class above. And, he won, I think he won the under 21 player of the year. Like Gary had mentioned, led the league in assists. I believe he was an MVP contender. But what was really cool about his situation is the fact that he was alone from an MLS club, who then went back to that MLS club and appeared he had an opportunity to be a member of the first team. He was one of the first real examples of what the CPL model could be in terms of players moving on while also taking that step back to work on their development. So, but to answer your question, Anthony, sorry, with that left-leaning, left-sided kind of ability, the first 2 or 3 names that came to mind with how we're right now playing tactically, Jeremy kind of at the tip of that midfield three. I feel like Rea would be absolutely immense in that position. We've seen Daniels and Probo kind of playing. Gary might be able to confirm this more, kind of like a pocket between the striker and those pivots. He could fit in those roles completely. I think if we play in a back three, he's a type of player that can play on the left side where we've seen Massimo Farron do his cutting in over the last season and a half. He's got that type of, we've been talking about how Patrice was trying to do the square pegs in the round holes early in the season. And with Telfer, it's bared fruit. With Rea, he almost can mold himself into those different roles properly. I like what Gary said, that, the circle, the circumference, he can just make those circle runs. Some of the best players of his type of profile in the league have that ability. Tristan Borges, I'm blanking on other names. Bustos, actually. Bustos is another great example. That type of player that has the confidence on the ball, they can put themselves into a position with 3-4 defenders closing in on them, cut back, see the option. Oh, that option's not there. Let me try to go. Oh, no, I'm going to go right. He appears to have that quick mind where he knows what he wants to do 3, 4, 5 steps ahead. As much as I love Patrice and as much as I do love the style of play that we've been providing, I do think that it is more plan A and there isn't that plan B or plan C option. And that's where those turnovers are happening. And that's where we're struggling at times. So I think that he works as almost that threat that we haven't really had maybe since Morelli. So I'm very, very, very excited for this.
Yeah, one more thing I forgot to mention as well. When you talk about his assists, it's not just open play assists. He's also a very, very good set piece taker. He's a very good corner kick taker and any kind of free kick to the sides of the pitch as well. When you look at his highlight tapes, a lot of his assists come from corners. And if you think about the players we commit into the box during set pieces, we've got Big Dan and Big Kale, both like 6'2", 6'3 plus, who are crying out for a player who can deliver a ball onto the top of their head. And yeah, he can do that as well.
So just in terms of the assists as well, like, is he able to like pass it? Like, is it a true pass that he's he's really good at, or is it like a cross, or is it a mixture of both? Because I think, we tend, I think, to kind of go for crosses a lot when we're kind of in that final third. And sometimes we're just kind of crying out for somebody to be able to just like play a split pass. Because we saw Telfer score a goal or two that way, like this season. So is he capable of that?
Yeah, he is. But I mean, when I think of the kind of player you're talking about, I think of like a Dennis Bergkamp or a Kaká, that sort of player. And I think the game has changed a bit since then. Like when I even think about Premier League games, there's not that many goals where like that kind of Thierry Henry goal when you've scored anymore, is there? Where someone slides it through between the centre back and the full back and they run onto it and slot it in. I think now teams have, like, tactically the game's developed more towards teams being very compact defensively. They're better at playing the offside trap or sitting in. So it's harder to play those sorts of passes anymore, especially. Well, I mean, you need a absolutely rapid striker as well, because fullbacks especially tend to have very good recovery pace now. When I think of Sean Rea's assist, like I said, I think of set pieces, and I also think of him just kind of pulling towards the side of the box and the edge of the box and kind of dinking it that way. Like there's an assist, if you look at his footage from 2022 against, I think it's against Cavalry away, and he picks the ball up on the edge of the box, not a lot of room to move in, and he just plays a beautiful kind of outside of the boot chip that kind of like curves around two defenders and lands on someone's head. And that's that sort of like subtlety and cuteness of pass is what he brings, rather than a kind of like sliding it through to Telfer to run onto, which will happen every now and then as well. But I think there's more subtlety to what he does.
Basically, you're saying I'm a fucking dinosaur. All right, Gareth,
Yeah,
thanks.
you're Roy Keane, mate. That's who you model yourself on.
Yeah. So, obviously it's the club obviously felt there was a need to bring him in because like we haven't been the last couple of games it's just been odd. Like we won a bunch of penalties and we haven't really been scoring too many goals from open play. But do you think we need anything extra on top of it? Like I know Sean Rea is going to take an awful lot of the cap space, but we've had Valesky is still in the missing list. Thiago's been injured quite a bit. Do you think we need another striker to help Telfer carry the load? Because when Telfer comes off, if he does need to come off, like there's not the bench looks kind of bare. So is a striker a necessity, or do you see somewhere else on the team where we need to bring somebody else in? Oh, sorry, yeah, Chris.
It's actually it's a conundrum because I hate to bring it up. Those blasted U21 minutes become a bit of a priority. So, one of the unfortunate things that happened this week in the Canadian soccer landscape that doesn't involve a drone was our under 20 team losing in the CONCACAF championships. And as a result of that, they don't get to qualify for the under 20 World Cup. But as a result of that, we might get Tavio back as soon as Monday. I'm totally speculating on this. But I know national teams don't tend to stick around after they get eliminated from tournaments. So he's an immediate help. I think he showed his quality during the tournament. I tuned into the one game where he scored, but even the other game I tuned into where he didn't score, that movement off the ball, he's almost like a combo 9-10. And that's exciting because with Telfer, it's one or the other. Like Telfer has shown that ability to drop deep with his back to goal, but then he's essentially ineffective on the attack. And we need somebody that could maybe do that back to the goal stuff, turn and run more so than turn and maybe kind of fill a space on the wing. So it's a weird one, him, Coimbra, even Shepard in the mix with the development team. They're all under 21 players. So by logic, Matt could bring Shepard in on a development deal. It won't go against the cap. And now all of a sudden you have 5 strikers if you want to include Valesky, 6 if you want to include Farron. So it becomes a good problem to have, but at the same time, you've only got space for 1, 2 max, the way Patrice has been playing recently. So it's important, I think, for if Telfer continues this form, for Telfer to maybe almost find a partner. I know, like structurally speaking, we don't play with 2 forwards or 2 strikers, but we almost have to get to that situation now because Telfer has become almost our only undroppable player in front of the pivots. So for me, I don't know if the striker need is super urgent. With Kareem Sal coming back in the back line, that takes fills a spot center back and left back as well. And it also seems like, in a weird way, as much as I'm not a big fan of Ferrazzo on the right, more so I like him on the left, or how he's been playing in that center midfield role this year. I do like the fact that he is that Swiss Army knife too. It kind of keeps us from potentially having to make a signing in the back line because we've already seen Wesley play a little bit of center back this year as well, showing his versatility. So if I can honestly be real with you, I think the one position where we truly need a signing is in the midfield. Rampy may still have international duty at some point down the road. Jeremy, as great as he's been, maybe a bit of a sick note this season. He was last season as well. We've seen Probo, we've seen Daniels, both move back into that 6/8 role, but I don't want to depend on that, especially in Probo's case where he's shown a lot of progression a little bit further up the field. So long story short, I think that this signing it's a big signing in the fact that, like I was saying in the last little bit, it's going to push everybody to be better. But I also do think that it does fill the one true need that we have, where even during our unbeaten streak, that playmaking touch, aside from Probo, seemed to be missing. So I think that this signing is huge. I think we've got Tavio coming in. We've got Kareem back. It feels like 3 new signings. The new lad, too, from Quebec, he's shown good quality. They liked him with the under 21s, too, because they were able to see him take risks, take chances, and now they know that he can handle some of these high-pressure situations. So, yeah, it's weird to say as a last place team that I don't think we need to add much, but I do think that we need to just sprinkle some touches in there. And I think that the best way to do that is through the development circle.
I must say, like, just talking about Kareem, it was great to see him back. I know you were there, Chris, at the Middlesbrough game, and he played so well because they had a striker there that plays for their first team. Plays in the Bundesliga. He's played last season at San Jose in the MLS, and Kareem did a great job against him. And for somebody who hasn't played probably in months, I thought he's done really well. So, Gary, what about you? Do you think there's a necessity elsewhere that we need, or do you think that we're looking good with this bumper signing coming in?
I still to be consistent. Since before the season started, I've said it numerous times on here. Like, I have a very clear idea of what I think we need. And watching us against Forge the other day, that was hugely highlighted on that gigantic pitch at Tim Hortons Field. Watching our attacks break down after having 70% possession when we have 5 or 6 players committed, and then Forge having an ocean of space just to counter into. That just really hammered it home even more what I feel like we need, which is a big leggy centre midfielder, big physical centre midfielder he has recovery pace, who can run backwards, who can run forwards with the ball to break lines by dribbling rather than passing. I've said it a million times. I really strongly feel long term that's what we need, because I feel, and I include Sean Rea in this, and these are the kind of footballers I love, but we have a lot of players who play in pockets, who like to play in pockets, who like to play in small spaces. We have a lot of small space players. I still feel like we need 1 or 2 big space players. We need players who can actually threaten the back line of teams by running beyond them in an attacking sense, and from a midfield sense, we need players who can threaten teams mid blocks by running through their block as well. Like, because when you face up against a press, you've got 3 choices. You can go around. When you face up against a mid block, you've got 3 choices. You can go around it, you can go over it, or you can go through it. There's 2 ways you can go through it. You can pass through it, which is what we try and do. Lots of progressive passes into the final third, or you can dribble through it, which takes out 2 or 3 players in one go. That's the kind of player I think we need. I think when we're having these sorts of discussions, it's quite helpful to kind of use well-known reference points to talk about this. So from like a Premier League sense, because I know most people listening probably also watch the Premier League, I'm thinking like an Onana type who's just moved from Everton to Aston Villa, that sort of person, that sort of profile, or a Declan Rice type, just someone that covers a lot of ground, keeps you secure, because when you're getting transitioned on, they've got the recovery pace to plug those gaps, and in an attacking sense can just drag you up the pitch with the ball at their feet as well. Unicorn player though, let's face it, in this league at this level, how many of those types of players exist? I don't know. As you can hear, the ambulance has come to pick me up because I've talked about this so much that I'm about to have a brain hemorrhage. But yeah, that's who I want.
So, like, is there anybody in the league? Like, I guess Sissoko would probably be the closest, I guess, to that kind of player. But as you said, it's kind of a unicorn player in this league. Like, who could be poached from, I guess, to bring to Halifax?
Yeah, I think we talked about this in the last episode actually. But Sissoko, Bruno Samaire from York. He feels slightly gettable. Someone like him. He'd be one of my top choices, because he's quite tidy on the ball as well, but he's also got those long legs that he can just stretch out when he needs to.
Chris, you touched on Jefferson Alphonse there like a little bit when you were talking. I did want to kind of get your thoughts on how he actually has, because we never really got a chance to really talk about him. How is he fitting into the team? What do you think of him as a player? And he's a good catch for around 21 minutes too, isn't he?
Real quick on the last topic too, I think if we are cap stricken, I think Luke Berryman becomes a potential option too. He's been with the U21s for a couple of years now.
Big fan. I'm a big fan of him, mate. I love him.
He sort of fits your profile that you were just talking about. Like, I'm not 100% sure of his overall totality of his game, but the game and a half I've seen of him play, he kind of has that broken play ability. He took one of the smartest fouls I've ever seen against Middlesbrough. Like, it was genius. And I think the referee respected the fact that it was such a smart call. It should have been a yellow, but I think the ref was like, damn, that was smart, and then just kind of let it go. So I think, yep, go ahead.
So yeah, just very quickly, I love him. Like, I watched a lot of Dow when he was there. I watched the under-21 games. I really like him as a player. I don't know if he's necessarily that. I would see him more as a Lorenzo, take the last 20 minutes out of Lorenzo's legs sometimes, because he can sit at the base of a midfield and control. Very, very tidy, very reliable, technically secure. Yeah, I really like Luke Berryman. I think he's a great shout for a signing, and I'd be really happy if we did that.
Yeah, me too, 100%. As for Jefferson, yeah, Anthony, watching him partner with Kareem, the CBU game, I think it was. I could be wrong if it was the CBU game or the game up in New Brunswick. The fact that he's able to partner with and create that cohesion and that chemistry with whoever he's with almost immediately, I can see why guys like Jordan and Jed already, like, they wanted him ages ago. Like, this guy has been on the radar for the Wanderers for at least a year, apparently. So early signs show that he's got those ethos in his style, kind of brute like without being too brutish. Very quick. He surprised me actually with his pace because he is a bit of a big boy. He also apparently has a bit of flexibility within his talent and his abilities as well. I've heard people say he can play a holding midfield role. He can also play fullback. So again, he kind of fits what we used to always joke about Stephen Hart doing, but now it seems like Pat's doing it too. He likes to have guys who can play multiple roles, who can play multiple positions, and do whatever job is asked of him. And so far, so good. His very first appearance actually kind of reminded me of, I spoke about him earlier, Daniil. And I remember saying to the guy that was sitting behind me, it's important for the under 21 minutes, but he's the type of guy that kind of supplements what we need. He can come in 10, 15, 20 minutes every single game and take that spot from somebody who needs a rest. I know Gary was just talking about coming in for Berryman coming in for Lorenzo, for example. If you switch to 5 in the back and you've got Jeremy and Rampy on the pitch with Lorenzo, if you take Lorenzo off, now you just go back to that 3 in the back system. Wesley, Fernandez, Ferrazzo, whoever's on the fullback spot, they can have a little bit more freedom too to get up and down the wings if we're down or up. So he's showed to me that everything that Patrice, Jordan, and everybody that we've spoken to or heard from have been hyping him about very, very early on. He's showing good quality. And I'm glad he got the run with the under 21s. I do. It's easy for a new guy to come halfway through the season, get a couple of minutes, and then end up back on the bench for the rest of the year. We've seen that over the years with players that have come in June, July, even in August. Like they almost are there to fill a spot in the time and in the moment. But then when players get back to being fit, they kind of get lost in the sauce. I feel like with his under 21 run, he's already shown enough quality. And I believe the coaching staff, with how much they sought after him, already have that trust for him to be an important part of the end of the season, especially because of those under 21 minutes.
Yeah, I've been super impressed with him. I think he was a really good pickup, and it's just he comes on and he gives you confidence. Like last year we were kind of rushing to get those under 21 minutes in, and I feel confident with that guy coming on the pitch, and I'm not like, oh dear God, we're just bunging someone on to get some minutes in. He actually brings something to it. So, and especially with Thiago kind of having his injury problems, it kind of gives somebody else to kind of to help catch those minutes. Gary,
and I'm not even, sorry, real quick, I'm not even trying to be like doom and gloom, but it actually is kind of concerning me this year, the under 21 situation, just because Camilo has shown his quality, but I don't know if there's like, maybe there's a cardiovascular issue there where he's not quite capable of playing more than 15, 20 minutes. But with Thiago's fitness, we just lost Gavis is gone. The other young fella is gone as well. So like we're genuinely losing bodies to take up those minutes. So, Dan, I'm not even trying to be too critical. He had one of the worst performances of his Wanderers career against Forge. I know he missed time due to injury, and he's not the type of player you drop. But, does Jefferson then become possibly that third center back option out of necessity because we need the under 21 minutes? It's not even like a concern where I'm a bit unwarranted. We all went through the tightrope last year as supporters. In Patrice, we trust. That's where it kind of came from. And in the end, whatever the plan was, to their credit, it got over the line. We could see that vision last year a little bit, though. This year, I'm having a hard time seeing where it's going to come from. So that's why I think, Anthony, to answer your question, I think that he plays that crucial role this year, whether it's 10, 15 minutes a game, or he ends up becoming a part of the actual starting structure, whether it's players out of form or somebody's hurt, God forbid. I think he's probably going to be as important as signing Sean Rea in a weird way.
Yeah, well, it's gonna get that way. Like, I mean, I thought that Rushnaz did quite well in the game against Middlesbrough that I saw. So I think that could be an option. Like, I think Jan has played like every game for like since he got here like a year and a half ago, which is great because he's a great keeper. But that's somewhere where you would think that most other teams tend to use goalkeeping as their way to build up their minutes. So it's definitely gonna be interesting. So Gary, I kind of just moved away from the Wanderers a little bit. Obviously. The team that was kind of steaming ahead with the league, Ottawa at the start of the season, they've had a couple of like little bumps in the road, and they hit a big speed bump in Toronto when York gave them a bit of a spanking 4-1, which I'm sure none of the fans expected. But uh, some of the responses from the fans on there, like they're still top of the table, was very surprising. What's your thoughts on? Have you seen why they've kind of hit this little bump in the road? Like, have teams copped on to the way that they play, or are teams catching up? Just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on it.
I mean, the first thing to say around Ottawa this season is I think they're on course to finish with the highest points total. Maybe Cavalry finished high, but they're like if you kind of doubled what they've got now, they'd have amongst the highest points total any team in this league has ever produced. They're the top scorers in the league as well. They have thrown together a collection of players that Fernando Lopez signed and managed to make them gel. So I like, just from contextualizing things with that, I think you can probably guess where I'm going with this, which is I found it to be a hugely exaggerated reaction to that defeat. Again, another caveat is that their fans watch their team every week and I don't. So I'm kind of coming at this just by looking at points totals and goals scored. And I completely respect the fact that people that watch their team every week have a much better idea than someone that doesn't. But just from what I've seen of them, they've played well most of the season. I know I saw some of the complaints were the fact that there was a lot of games where they relied on talent to grab the odd goal here or there, but that's not borne out in their goal difference. Like it's not like they're with teams like that. What you often see is their goal difference is like +4, even though they're top of the league by a mile, because they're winning a lot of games like 1-0 and stuff. That's not the case with Ottawa. With Ottawa, there, and I think it's been exaggerated by that Valor game, but they've still got a really good goal difference, which shows they're actually winning games pretty comfortably. But I think this has been bubbling for a while. I remember last season it turned quite nasty towards the end, and when they were on that run of conceding a lot of last minute goals, it definitely turned, and their fans definitely turned on the coaching staff, which is, as we've seen ourselves, when you have a very passionate, very big fan base, that happens because everyone is represented within those group, the positive and the very non-positive as well, which is a good thing. It is a good thing, but it does kind of, like, when we're sitting here 7th in the league and we're seeing the team that are top by quite a distance with the most goals scored getting people calling for their coach to be fired after a defeat, you do kind of sit there and go, really? I mean, he at least deserves till the end of the season, doesn't he? Because they've got like an 11-point cushion for the playoffs as well. I recognize that this has been brewing for a long time, and a lot of it centers around playing style. I think a lot of the Ottawa fans feel as though they have a defensive coach and they've signed all of these wonderful attackers, and why aren't we being more gung-ho and more attacking? And the question they should be asking, and we don't know the answer to this, they don't either, but the question they should be asking is the Ottawa style of play mandated by Atletico Madrid? Because, as I said to someone on Twitter, I know with the City group, all of their teams have to kind of follow a similar style of play. I listened to a podcast where they interviewed, there's a guy who works for City Group, and his job is literally to go around all of the clubs, making sure they're following these specific styles of play. So if the answer to that question is yes, Atletico Madrid tell Ottawa how to play, then Gonzalez's hands are tied. He has to stick to that Simeone way of playing, and the next coach will as well. So getting rid of the coach will make no difference to this situation. If they don't have to strictly adhere to that, then there is a discussion to be made around the coach, because if you're a fan base that prioritizes a specific style of play over winning, then like fucking hell, more good luck to you. Like if you really do feel like that. But I promise you, if we got to this time next year and they've got this wonderful gung-ho attacking style of football, but they're out of the playoff spots, their fans are not going to be happy. They're going to be complaining even louder. So I feel like it's a bit of a what do you call that agreement you can make with the devil? I'm sorry that everyone's screaming at
The
a Faustian pact.
Faustian, yeah.
Yeah, it feels a bit like that at the moment. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it's been odd. Like, I saw quite a bit of the noise online and stuff like that, and I was like, wow, it's it, I understand that clubs have their philosophies and all that kind of stuff, but uh, Gonzalez was around the system when he was learning to coach, so obviously that's going to influence how he does stuff. And I guess, like, if they find a diamond in the rough in any of their clubs, it's going to be easier for a player they find to go and play with Atletico Madrid if they're already able to play the style, so they can just fit right in, right? So, like, it makes sense. Like, they're paying the bill, so I guess they probably have some sort of say over it. But it's just the reason I was asking. It just blew my mind that here we are. We're actually eighth, Gary, not seventh, and it's just it's so weird when you, like, like, we're not really calling for our coach's head, and they're like basically almost running away with the league, and it's just crazy, the mindset. So I did
The
have.
similarities. Oh, sorry, Anthony. Just real quick, the similarities though between our fan bases, I do see it. I think sometimes our fan base gets a little bit too over the top because there's a fear of history repeating itself. And in Ottawa's case, I don't want to say they're spoiled, but they do have that league title. So winning that league title this year, I don't really think is like a priority for the fans. It'll be great, obviously, but from the fans I've spoken to, they want that playoff win. They want to get over that hump that they couldn't get over the year that they won the league title. So I think that's where it's born from. And I think Gary brings up an incredible point about the ethos of the parent club impacting the ethos of the I guess the feeder club. I don't know, really the wrong term because they're not necessarily a feeder club, but a partner club at the very least. To me, that's evident because there are aspects of last year and this year. The only difference is they're not blowing late leads. As shitty as the season ended for Ottawa last year, if you reverse even 2 or 3 of those results where they conceded a late win, they're in second or third place last year. They're not missing the playoffs. In fact, they might have ended up going on a run because they even had the quality last year. So I think it, as ridiculous as it is on paper and as ridiculous as it on the surface and as ridiculous as it is in reality, it's that inherited, born, deep-seated, you fear history repeating itself. And I think it's even happening with Cavalry because, again, they won the league title, but their fans want more. And yeah, they haven't been great this season, but we saw last year, Anthony, you and me had a really good conversation about it. They were calling for Tommy's head in like May or June last year. And look how the season ended. So, like, my message to Ottawa fans would be still to be patient. Like I said at the start of the year, this is the Galacticos as they are. You want immediate results, but this is a 2-year project. Any team that resets the way Ottawa reset, it doesn't matter how good the players are. It might take 2 years, especially a league like ours, where you play 10 less games than a standard top division. You're not going to have that extra, in our case, with 10 games, that's like a third of the season almost, to build that. So that's where I think it's born from. It's just they remember last year. They're kind of getting reminders of it now, even though they're leading the pack. And I think that fear is kind of setting because I brought Eddie up. Eddie had posted, it reminded me of the post that I posted after we lost to Forge. The next 4 or 5 games are going to define the season type thing. That's obviously not going to be the case for Ottawa. They can lose the next 4 or 5 and still probably find a way to be top. But that's when the fear kind of sits into that last quarter of the season. They remember the last quarter of the season last year, and who's in charge? The same guy that was in charge last year. So I can see where it's coming from, even though it's a little bit ridiculous.
Can I just ask you both kind of like an ethical question, I guess it would be. I like when we started doing this podcast, I always like kind of I've got like I don't think I'll ever call for a manager's head because I don't I my opinion on it is that, and it's the same why I'm weird about like saying players should be let go and stuff, because like the salaries in this league, like the coaches in this league probably make really like good money, but it's not Premier League millions. It's kind of not to the point where they get fired and they're fine. Like these people would like go on EI and have to find new jobs. And it just makes me really uncomfortable like calling for managers' heads in this league because of that. Um, am I just being a wimp, or do you two have like similar reservations? Like, where are you at with that?
I grew up a junior hockey fan, and it's the
Mm,
same thing, Gary. Like,
right.
I think back to when Cam Russell, who was now the general manager of the Mooseheads, when he was the head coach, the discourse online was nasty when the Mooseheads weren't doing too well. At the end of the day, this guy was our neighbor. Like, this guy lives in our community. This guy makes a living doing this. We pay the money for the entertainment. So like there is that, I guess,
Mm,
um, that acceptance, I suppose, within the sports sphere, and you see it in politics too. Politicians doing bad, get him out, get him out, get him out. I think it's kind of the aura of having a position, a VIP position, and people don't know like how much money you're making or whatever else like that. It's easy for them to say, sack the manager. He can go home with his 6-figure paycheck and just find another job. When we all know, you, me, Anthony, know that's not the reality. For players, after their playing careers are done, a lot of them struggle. With coaches, it's the exact same thing. In fact, it's almost even less because players have that coaching window after they retire. But what happens after your coaching window potentially closes, right? So, I've been that person for the last 4 years, well, not last 4 years, but the first 4 years of the club's history with Steven. And it got to a point during that fourth year where it was untenable. It was
mm,
I couldn't defend him anymore. But a basis of my defense of Steven, especially over those first 3 years, was knowing the man, knowing the person, and knowing that he's not going out there to lose games on purpose. And I think that that's the one thing that our fan base, even if it's a small percentage of it, are flawed in, is that just they think that the players and the coaches want to lose. Like they're not showing enough effort. It's like, well, you know what? Maybe they are showing enough effort. It's just not quite enough effort. Maybe they are giving 100%. The other team's giving 110%. I've always been the type of person to just kind of step back and see the human element of things. Some guys might have something going on at home. These guys are all not from here. So they've got families in different provinces and countries. Coaches is the same thing. And with Pat, he's been very open about his family situation and his family life. They're not here all the time. So, when we lose a match and I go online and I see people calling him a high school coach or a fraud or a reject or a shit coach, do you know the person? Is normally the first thing I think. And if you don't know the person, then how can you even say these things knowing that this is their job, this is their well-being, this is their living? You pay for a season ticket. If you're not happy, don't pay for a season ticket next year. It's that
thing
simple.
thing I've
So
noticed with that as well is, again, not just a Wanderers thing. This is league wide. Everyone always completely blames the coach. I never hear players getting blamed, and I always find that slightly frustrating because you see people saying like he was out tacticked or he was out like, okay, that's your hypotheses. Follow up with exactly why he, like if you're talking about that Ottawa game, the coach didn't know what he was doing, he was out tacticked. Tell me exactly how you think he was out tacticked. Like in what way do you think he was outthought by the opposition coach? And I just find it's the easy answer. Okay, we didn't play well, it must be the coach's fault.
I think it's like I think it's a microcosm of uh football in general. Like so, people who go to the Wanderers or go to Ottawa or that they also watch the Premier League and they see how coaches get treated over there. That when things aren't going well, if a manager gets sacked after 10 games, 15
Yeah.
games, we've all seen it happen. The difference obviously is that you're going to fall back and get a £3 million payout, whereas obviously here you're not.
Mm,
So I understand it to a, a small extent where, if your team is not successful and they're not doing well and you kind of want like the coaches, everything stops at the coach. That's just the way it is. So like you always hear managers in the Premier League saying the same thing. As soon as they cross that white line, I can't do anything. It's up to them, blah, 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 blah. And players will never get the blame for it. It's just the way it is. And, we've seen Pat defend the players this season. So, it does tend to fall on the coach's shoulders. I do agree with you both that, we kind of, these guys aren't making millions. So if they do get sacked, like, it not everybody's going to end up like Rob Gale with a job in Portland. Most guys are, I know, but that's the thing. But most guys are going to end up just, probably going back to League One or trying to get a university job or whatever it is. So I do understand fans' frustrations, but there's no legacy teams. The league is still only 6 or 7 years old. So if you're if you're Manchester United manager and they've got a massive history and they've got history of winning stuff and the team isn't doing well, obviously the fans are going to be like, we come from a culture of winning stuff. Like there is no culture here. Ford have obviously won a bunch of titles, but like where's the history to back up calling for a manager to be sacked if like, you don't have one. There's gonna be teams that are gonna finish bottom. There's gonna be teams. There's only 8 teams, so it is kind of bizarre to me to hear like and because of cap and all that kind of stuff, and 21 minutes and all this kind of stuff, it's so difficult for the coaches to coach that. You can't just go out like Patrice right now. I'm sure the last thing he wants to do is be sticking under 21 players in there to because he needs to win games, right? And just the rules are kind of tying his hands a little bit. So yeah, it's a weird one.
It's just if you think like over the past, say, 6 weeks, we've obviously seen online people calling for Patrice's head, and we finished second last season.
Yeah,
I've seen Tommy Wooden Jr. out in
yeah,
the open arguing with Cavalry fans who are yelling at him they want him to lose his job,
yeah.
even though they won the league last year and got to the final. And now you've got Ottawa fans yelling for Carlos Gonzalez to lose his job, even though they're top of the league by however many points.
Well, I've heard people
it's
calling
just
for
crazy.
I've heard people calling for James Merriman's head now as well because
Yeah.
they've been on a bad run.
Yeah.
But the fans, it's not his fault. Like because they were like saying like he took over a team that had won the final, but like people forget that when they won that final, that whole team and coaching system was dismantled. Their two best players went to Forge. Their coach left to go somewhere else. So and then like Diaz got sold mid-season and went back. And when he came back, he didn't go to Pacific. He went to Vancouver. So I don't see where you could blame James Merriman on what's happened there. There's obviously like a recruiting issue, or they don't have the money, or there's something not quite right there, right? So it is kind of strange to me. Like anytime we've played against Pacific, I think they've been probably one of the best coached teams in the league because he sets them up so well. Like he you can tell he studies what other coaches do, and he sets his team up to defend it. So maybe he has a drone. Who knows? So yeah. Boys, it's like I'm glad that we went through this whole podcast and we barely talked about that Forge game. So thank you both for that because it's the last thing I wanted to. The future's bright. I'm super excited, and it's a little. It was like the nail sign last year. It just gave everybody such a boost. Obviously, things aren't going as well as they should be this year, but bringing in a player like Sean Rea, I think, was a masterstroke from Derek and Matt Began, and congratulations to the two of them and bringing in a player of that caliber. It's great to see that Halifax is a destination for a guy of that talent because I mean, he was playing MLS football like last year, and he's willing to come to Halifax and give it a shot here. So I'm super pumped for Monday. Do you think we'll see him make an appearance? Like, do you think he's match fit? Like, what's the word in the street, Chris? Okay, so Chris says cross his fingers, so he usually has.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of finger crossing for sure. When we first heard details of things, that was actually one of the footnotes was that his availability for Monday looked good. I'm assuming he would be starting training effective immediately. I'm assuming he's here, and if he's not here, I'm guessing that he's probably making his rounds at the airport right now. So, I think that even if he comes off the bench as a sub, you get that nice little crowd ovation.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to quite jump into the belly of the beast immediately. I think that that would be the best benefit. But again, the Daniil signing brought such a vibe to the players. it also really brought a vibe to the fans, and it showed the intent that Derek and Matt had to get quality players and to improve the squad. So I think that anybody who said the season was over, or anybody who's given up on this club, this is a signing that shows the intent that it's only the beginning. Like you said, Anthony, the future's bright.
Yeah, I'm super pumped for it. Gary?
Yeah, I think he'll play a part on Monday. I think we're at the point now where we're getting towards the last chance saloon.
Yeah.
So halfway through the season, we're on 13 points. The fifth place team over the past 5 years has finished around between like 33 and 38 points. So we need to find 21 to 26, 27 points from somewhere. That's 7 wins and a few draws in 14 games. So
fucking hell.
That's the road that's in front of us if we want a playoff spot. And you need players like Sean Rea playing parts to do that. So I fully expect him to be a sub on Monday and come on.
Yeah, I'm can't wait to see him come onto the pitch for us. I think I'm super pumped. It's like we get signings like when Diaz came, I was like, oh, this is pretty awesome. Provo came, it was pretty awesome. Not to denigrate those guys, but when you get in a player like this, it just kind of gives everybody a boost. And just from seeing like the chats in online and stuff like that, like I can tell the fan base is pretty much in behind this one too. So it's gonna be fun. Gary, before we go, you did want to start a new part of the show, Wanderers Trivia. So what's your question for this week?
Oh, you didn't let me prepare that. Actually, no, I've got one actually, because this is something Chris and I having a comment chat about this on Twitter months ago. So who can name? I don't even know how to phrase this question. There is a Wanderers goal. There is a one. So before Dan Nimick missed that penalty, we'd scored all of our penalties, right?
Yeah.
There is a player who only scored one penalty for us. What is his name? Okay, that's my trivia question.
Love it. Answers on a postcard. Chris, what's your address? Send it to Chris Sale.
123 fake street. No, that's a great question though, Gary. That stumped me, man. I'm not obviously gonna speculate because I don't want to spoil the answer for supporters, but yeah, that's a good question because I can't think of who it is.
There might be more than one that only scored one penalty, but there's one that I thought of off the top of my head that had only scored one penalty for us. So I'll leave it there.
If I figure it out, I'll message you guys.
I apologize. There are 2 players who have only scored one penalty for us. Answers on a postcard.
Love it. Great to have you back. It's been fun.
Votes, please. Right foot, please. Time to drink or vote. Get out. Out to vote.